Sometimes, a single glance can lead to a grave misjudgment, but it's through those mistakes that we learn the lessons to change. In today's video, we'll uncover a deeply moving story where prejudice drives a veteran police officer to the brink of a serious mistake. A young man is pulled over for no clear reason, simply because he doesn't look like he belongs in the neighborhood. But the biggest twist? This young man happens to be the son of someone unexpected, the precinct's new captain. This isn't just a story about prejudice. It's a journey of awakening. Can someone with years of experience have the courage to acknowledge their errors and make a change? And what lessons can they, and we, take away from this? Join us as we navigate through moments of tension, suspense, anger, and profound understanding. Discover the powerful message of equality, humanity, and how we perceive others in our lives. When you judge someone, it doesn't define them, it defines you. Don't miss this gripping story. It's not just a tale, but a life-changing lesson. Click subscribe now so you won't miss more inspiring stories here on Inspiring Hearts. The sky over Serenity, though moonless, glowed faintly under the soft yellow light of street lamps stretching across the quiet town. The late autumn chill weaved its way through the leaves, scattering along the damp roads glistening after an evening rain. Inside a patrol car, veteran officer Ethan Blake, known as the Old Wolf of the Serenity Police Department, sat alongside Jake Collins, a fresh-faced rookie eager to make his mark. Ethan, with his graying hair and time-worn eyes, exuded an air of quiet pride in the decades he had dedicated to his career. The patrol car rolled slowly through a wealthy neighborhood. The stillness was only broken by the faint hum of the engine and the occasional chirp of crickets in the underbrush. Suddenly, Ethan hit the brakes hard, his sharp gaze locking onto a sleek black sports car cruising ahead. "Turn on the lights, Jake," Ethan ordered, his voice low but commanding. Jake, puzzled, glanced at his senior officer, the confusion plain on his face. "Sir, the car hasn't done anything wrong. No speeding, no suspicious signals. Why are we pulling them over?" Ethan let out a dry chuckle, as if the answer was self-evident. "Jake, in this job, there are things you don't catch on radar or see in flashing signals. Sometimes, you just know when someone doesn't belong." The icy certainty in Ethan's tone left Jake uneasy. Something about it didn't feel right, like a small stone tossed into a still lake, sending ripples of doubt through his mind. The sleek sports car rolled to a stop by the curb, the red and blue lights reflecting off its glossy paint. Inside the car, 19-year-old Noah Grant was on his way home after a late-night study group. His heart raced as he checked the rearview mirror, his eyes wide with a mix of anxiety and dread. "What's going on? I didn't do anything wrong," Noah muttered, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his phone. He called the one person he knew would have answers, his father, Oliver Grant. "Dad, I got pulled over. I don't know why." At a small manufacturing plant across town, Oliver paused his work and wiped the sweat from his brow. His deep voice, steady but tinged with concern, came through the line. "Noah, stay calm. Remember, politeness is key. Don't show fear. Don't argue. Do exactly as they say and look them in the eye. I'll be there soon." Oliver's advice felt like a fragile shield for Noah in this tense moment. Yet inside, the young man's emotions churned, a mix of fear and injustice. Ethan stepped out of the patrol car with a confident stride, his piercing gaze scanning Noah as though searching for secrets hidden in plain sight. He rapped on the car window and gestured for it to be rolled down. "License and registration," Ethan demanded curtly, his tone cold as a winter breeze. Noah fumbled slightly but managed to hand over his documents, his hands shaking as he tried to steady himself. "Here are my license and registration, sir," he said, his voice wavering but polite. Ethan skimmed the documents before fixing his intense stare on Noah. "What are you doing here at this hour? Is this car even yours?" Noah, doing his best to remain composed, responded carefully. "I just finished a study session, sir. This is my family's car." Ethan raised an eyebrow. his skepticism evident as his eyes narrowed. "People like you, I don't usually see in this neighborhood. Is there a reason you're here?" Standing a few steps away, Jake watched the interaction, his discomfort growing with every word. Unable to stay silent any longer, he stepped forward, his voice hesitant but resolute. "Sir, I don't think he's done anything wrong. This might just be a misunderstanding. I don't think we should press him further." Ethan turned to Jake, his glare sharp as a blade. "Rookie, you're not here to decide. This is your first lesson. Learn to observe and stay quiet." Jake fell silent, the weight of Ethan's authority pressing down on him like a heavy stone. Even though every instinct told him this wasn't right, he couldn't defy his superior. His heart sank, burdened by the sense of complicity in something unjust. Meanwhile, Noah sat frozen in his car, feeling each question and gaze like a knife cutting into his dignity. The overwhelming sense of unfairness surged through him, like cold waves crashing relentlessly against the walls of his mind. The tense atmosphere was shattered by the sound of a phone ringing. Oliver Grant had arrived. As Noah's phone call ended, the tall figure of Oliver Grant emerged outside the car window under the dim glow of the streetlight. His heavy footsteps echoed against the pavement, each step carrying a mix of worry, anger, and unshakable determination. In the hazy light, his face bore the tension of a man deeply concerned, but tempered with the calm resolve of someone accustomed to handling adversity. Ethan glanced up at the approaching footsteps, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Oliver stopped by the patrol car, locking eyes with Ethan. His voice was deep, steady, and carried the weight of authority. "Officer, I'm the father of the boy in the car. I need to know why my son has been pulled over." Inside the car, Noah spotted his father, and tears welled up in his eyes. Although the sight of Oliver gave him a sense of relief, the storm of humiliation still churned within him, threatening to drown his emotions. Ethan, maintaining his air of superiority, responded without hesitation. "You want to know why? Your son doesn't belong here. A car like that with someone like him in it looks suspicious." The words pierced Oliver like icy daggers. He clenched his fists but managed to keep his voice calm. A remarkable feat in the face of such blatant prejudice. "Doesn't belong. What exactly do you mean, Officer Blake? Are you talking about the car, or are you talking about my son's skin color?" Ethan hesitated, his composure faltering for a brief moment before he regained his rigid stance. "I'm just doing my job. If he has nothing to hide, there's nothing to worry about." Standing nearby, Jake could no longer contain his unease. The tension in the air was suffocating, and he stepped forward, his young voice filled with conviction. "Sir, I don't think this is right. He's complied with everything, handed over all his documents. We don't have any reason to keep holding him here." Ethan turned sharply toward Jake, his glare like a blade. "Jake, this isn't your call. Next time, keep your opinions to yourself." Jake fell silent, but a fire burned in his chest. Ethan's words only deepened his sense of injustice, carving a lasting scar into the rookie's ideals about fairness and duty. Oliver drew in a deep breath, his gaze drilling into Ethan. Each word he spoke carried the precision of a blade aimed at the heart of Ethan's confidence. "Do you even know who I am, Officer Blake? I'm Oliver Grant, a member of the Serenity Town Council. I have worked tirelessly to improve the lives of people in this community. It was my vote that approved the funding for the police training program that you were a part of." Ethan froze for a split second, the words landing like a direct blow. His air of self-assurance cracked, but he still tried to defend himself. "I didn't know who you were. I'm just doing my job." Oliver's chuckle was cold, his voice sharp as a blade. "Your job is to protect this community, not to profile and mistreat the very people you've sworn to serve. You pulled my son over because of your bias. That's not duty. It's abuse of power." From inside the car, Noah listened to his father's words. Each sentence felt like a warm light piercing through the darkness that had surrounded him. He no longer felt alone on this cold, unforgiving night. Ethan, though still clinging to his pride, began to feel the first stirrings of discomfort in his chest. His voice softened slightly, losing some of its earlier rigidity. I understand, but I don't believe my actions were wrong. Jake couldn't hold back any longer. He stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly but filled with emotion. Sir, I'm just a rookie, but I know this. We can't judge someone based on their appearance or where they happen to be. That's not experience, it's prejudice. And prejudice has no place in justice. Jake's words rang out like a bell in the night, cutting through the tension and silencing the scene. Oliver turned to Jake, a look of unspoken respect shining in his eyes. Ethan turned away, a heavy weight settling in his chest. For the first time in his long career, he felt the sharp sting of self-reflection. He began to realize that all his years of experience had been clouded by bias, and now that flaw was being painfully exposed. After a tense confrontation, a heavy silence blanketed the night like a suffocating shroud. Ethan Blake, once proud of his professional instincts, now stood motionless under the faint glow of the streetlight. The words of Oliver and Jake echoed in his mind, like heavy blows against the door of a mind long sealed shut by prejudice. Oliver looked at Ethan, his gaze no longer angry, but filled with understanding and compassion. Officer Blake, I'm not here to make you feel small or condemned, but I hope you understand that prejudice doesn't just hurt people like my son. It tarnishes your own image. Your job is not to judge, it is to protect. Ethan lifted his head, the rigidity in his eyes replaced with a faint flicker of vulnerability. His voice, trembling slightly, broke through the silence. You're right, Mr. Grant. Perhaps I've let my years on the job shape my thinking too much. I'm sorry for troubling your son and for disappointing you in the process. Jake stepped forward, his youthful voice firm and resolute. Sir, experience isn't always the best teacher. I think we can always learn from new perspectives and our mistakes. And maybe the most important thing to remember is this: justice can never be built on judgment and prejudice. Ethan nodded slowly. For the first time in his 37 years on the force, he felt the need to step back, reflect, and start making changes. Turning to Noah, he handed back the young man's documents, his tone far gentler than before. I'm sorry. You're free to go. Drive safely. Noah looked at Ethan, his fear dissipating, but a faint shadow of doubt still lingered in his eyes. He nodded, replying cautiously. Thank you, officer. Oliver placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder, his gaze brimming with pride. He turned back to Ethan, delivering one final, powerful message. Remember, judgment doesn't define the person being judged. It defines the one doing the judging. I hope the next time we meet, you'll be a fairer officer and a role model for young men like Jake Top of Form Bottom of Form.